Between the headlines on the Next News Network, I'm Gary Franchi. We've got lots of news for you today. We're going to break down what the latest 24-hour rundown from the White House is in just a moment, as well as all of the latest that we've been tracking all day. We've got the latest on the Memorandum of Understanding, the garbage dump in Chicago that just opened up with Obama's name, and so much more. But first, your White House rundown. Good evening. I'm Gary Franchi, Next News Network Chief White House Correspondent, delivering the latest White House news from the past 24 hours here on our streaming partner, Trump Daily Post. Tonight's rundown starts with a major diplomatic victory overseas and moves back to the White House for the administration's next steps. The Vice President's briefing and a Medal of Honor ceremony honoring extraordinary American valor. President Trump closed out the G7 summit in France with the formal signing of the U.S.-Iran Memorandum of Understanding at the Palace of Versailles, a major step that the White House highlighted as a direct result of Trump's diplomacy. The agreement includes reopening the Strait of Hormuz, a $3 billion regional reconstruction framework, and the launch of technical talks on removing Iran's enriched uranium stockpiles. G7 leaders backed the agreement in a joint statement under President Trump's leadership, and the administration spotlighted immediate effects: lower oil prices, positive market reaction, and renewed American leverage. Vice President JD Vance used his White House press briefing to draw a sharp distinction from the Obama-era JCPOA, stressing that this agreement contains no upfront U.S. sanctions relief and ties any future relief to Iranian behavior. The administration also kept attention on Jay Clayton's nomination to serve as Director of National Intelligence, with the Senate hearing postponed at the president's direction so the chamber can first move on another nominee. And from the Pool Report, the White House confirmed that President Trump signed the MOU during a dinner with the French President Emmanuel Macron in Versailles. The signing took place on June 19th local time in France, marking the defining action of the president's summit schedule. From a later travel Pool Report, the presidential motorcade reached Paris Airport at about 1:40 a.m. local time. Air Force One departed at 1:57 a.m. for the return flight. That closed the president's travel in France after the summit and the Versailles signing. Also from the Pool Report back in Washington, President Trump arrived at the White House at 4:01 a.m., bringing the trip to a close and returning immediately to the next round of presidential business. And according to the daily guidance, the president's Thursday schedule included executive time, a pre-taped interview, an intelligence briefing at 4, and a 4 p.m. Medal of Honor ceremony in the East Room. The guidance also scheduled Vice President Vance for a 11 a.m. on-camera briefing at the James S. Brady briefing room, where the administration put more detail behind the Iran agreement and its enforcement-first structure. The White House said that President Trump will award the Medal of Honor to 3 Americans for gallantry above and beyond the call of duty: Major James Capers Jr., U.S. Marine Corps retired, for actions in Vietnam; Colonel John W. Ripley, U.S. Marine Corps, posthumously for heroism in Vietnam; and Major Nicholas Dockery, U.S. Army retired, for bravery in Afghanistan. It's a powerful close to a day that paired diplomatic strength abroad with honor for military courage at home. So across the past 24 hours, the Trump White House showed a clear pattern: direct presidential action overseas, swift follow-through back in Washington, and continued focus on national security, American strength, and honoring those who serve with exceptional valor. Now, that is the end of our White House report. And now we'll turn from the White House file to the rest of today's top stories and welcome you to the show. So who do we have in the house tonight? We're going to check it out here. We've got Dave and Corinne and Jeremy. Everyone's filing in. Damon is here. Don Nelson is here. Great to see you guys. We're going to get our news day started. I hope you're having a wonderful day. I know I am. And we're getting closer to the weekend, guys. I hope you're excited for that. Father's Day is coming up. Make sure to call your father. And if you are a father, soak in it. Soak up every minute of it. All right. I'm looking forward to my Father's Day this weekend, too. With my little ones, I'm going to give my father a call, check on him. But first, let's get into what happened with the Iran deal, as we have more details from that. Here's the number that blew the whole scam apart. 12.5 million barrels of oil moved through the Strait of Hormuz last night, the highest since the conflict began. Not a think tank memo, not another CNN panic panel, real barrels, real ships, real relief. And while that happened, JD Vance said gas dropped below $4 a gallon for the first time since the fighting, and the stock market roared, and Iran skipped a second straight night of firing its ships. Donald Trump didn't hand Tehran a blank check. He put Iran in a chokehold, smashed key military capacity, reopened the choke point, and made the anti-Trump class look stupid again. This matters because the Strait of Hormuz is not some abstract patch of water for foreign policy hobbyists. It's the artery that pumps energy into your economy, your grocery bill, your commute, and every truck that moves food across this country. When Iran jams that route, American families get hammered. When Donald Trump breaks that leverage, your costs fall, and fast. And that's why the most important line today didn't come from a legacy media propagandist. It came from the vice president. 12.5 million barrels moved through the strait. Gas fell below $4, and more declines are coming. Now, look at the corruption machine. Barack Obama and the foreign policy priesthood, they bribed the mullahs and called it sophistication. The same establishment class that swore Trump would drag America into chaos now chokes on a roaring market, falling oil, resumed ship traffic, and an Iran that stopped shooting at vessels for two straight nights. Donald Trump shattered the old lie that America must choose between endless war and surrender. He used force, leverage, and a ticking 60-day deadline. Your wallet will feel the difference. And speaking of things that work in the real world instead of on a consultant's white paper, let me hit this quickly. You've probably seen the clip of Joe Rogan sitting with Mel Gibson talking about people close to him who went through serious health struggles and then saw dramatic turnarounds. Rogan brings up light-based therapies and how they impact the body at a cellular level. Gibson says it's straight the stuff works, and it got my attention because in my own life I watched something very similar unfold. For a long time, my wife was dealing with constant discomfort and anxiety. It was one of those draining battles that wears you down. Then we found red light therapy through Jonathan Otto. We gave it a shot, and it made a real difference. If you want to check it out, go to myredlight.com, use NNN25 for individual items or NNN30 for bundles, and make sure you check out the interviews with Jonathan right here on this channel. When something brings real relief, you don't hide it. You pass it on. Now back to the part that sent the media into a tailspin. Iran posted the executed memorandum online, and the document included the headline grabbing clause about a $300 billion reconstruction framework in sanctions language. The usual frauds sprinted to scream that Trump was funding Iran. Then JD Vance blew that lie to pieces in one sentence. The Obama deal gave them over $1 billion of American money. This deal gives them $0 of American money. That's the pivot. Not surrender, conditional leverage. And in a minute, I'm going to go ahead and present to you the tweets because Trump's own words pour gasoline on this. This is from Rapid Response 47. President Trump posting this to Truth Social. Oil is flowing. Iran can never have a nuclear weapon. The world will be safe. The stock markets are roaring. Jobs are at records. And prices are dropping. Affordability. Our country is strong, safe, and respected like never before. You're welcome, President DJT. So Trump says the results are already on the board. Oil flowing, prices dropping. Now Fox shows the first hard proof of falling energy prices in the 60-day Iran deal framework taking effect. It's already having an impact. President Trump formally marked the extension of the ceasefire. Oil and gas prices continued falling. The memorandum launches a 60-day push towards a final deal with provisions that include reopening key routes, easing sanctions, access to frozen Iranian funds, and renewed negotiations over Iran's nuclear program. Here it is.
President Trump signed the Memorandum of Understanding, formally marking the extension of the ceasefire with Iran. He was joined by French President Emmanuel Macron and Secretary of State Rubio, among others. We know on the Iranian side, Iran's President Masoud Pezeshkian was responsible for signing the document in the capital of Tehran. Earlier in the day, the president talked about this agreement, what it means, and what happens if it isn't enforced.
It's a memorandum of understanding. If it doesn't get done in 60 days, that's all right. We go back to bombing. You know, I don't want to do that because it's so good. But we might have to because we're never going to let them have a nuclear weapon. But they've agreed not to, and you'll see that very clearly in the agreement. We're not putting up money. Only if they're doing things right. If they're doing things right, if people want to invest, they can invest.
On Wednesday, a U.S. official read the agreement to reporters. Within the deal includes an immediate end to hostilities across the region, including in Lebanon. The final deal must be reached within 60 days, with the possibility of an extension. This is related to Iran's nuclear program and the details that are yet to be discussed. The U.S. naval blockade of Iranian ports will end, the Strait of Hormuz will open, and the Iranians will receive tiered sanctions relief based on their performance and their agreements with the United States. Now, on the issue of negotiations, Iran's Parliament Speaker Mohammad Khalibaf, their top negotiator, said this.
The difference between the negotiations now and the previous periods is that today the flag of victory is in the field, which both enemies and friends have admitted. Our people saw the glory of the armed forces too, even though they were against the well-equipped enemy.
This is really a wait-and-see moment. The world is waiting to see if the Iranians will adhere to the agreement and if they are serious about these nuclear concessions as it relates to their program. Now, more broadly, the region is prepared for the possibility that this deal collapses. But at this moment, the president is touting the diplomatic success and what it will mean for the stock market and the oil market.
I still think they should have taken the Strait of Hormuz and Karg Island. So the market heard the message. Oil started sliding in hopes that this ceasefire hold next Trump fires back. Usual weak-kneed critics demanding even more as stock hits records and crude keeps tumbling. These fools, he writes, who think I haven't been tough enough on Iran when the stock market just hit a record high and oil prices are tumbling down are either jealous, bad people, or stupid. Make America great again. You gotta love the tweets from the president. So his answer to the panic crowd is simple. The market's up, oil's down. Now the vice president brings the receipts, including 12.5 million barrels moving through the strait. He hosted the press briefing today in another rare moment as the press secretary, Caroline Leavitt, is still out on maternity leave.
I think the president's peace plan in Iran is already bearing real fruits for the American people. Last night, 12.5 million barrels of oil went through the Strait of Hormuz. That is a high since the beginning of the conflict. Oil prices are down nearly at their level from the pre-war conflict. Gas prices dropped below $4 a gallon today for the first time since the conflict. And importantly, they're going to keep falling further given how low oil prices are. On the military side, the Iranians, for the second night in a row, did not shoot at any ships in the Strait of Hormuz. So far, they are honoring their end of the commitment. And on the blockade, CENTCOM has allowed north of a dozen ships to go through our naval blockade, and so we're also honoring our end of the early part of the agreement. On the military side, a couple of things that are still true and will be true whether the Iranians comply with the rest of the deal or not. Number one, their nuclear program has been completely destroyed. Their capacity for enrichment, the facilities at which they were using to develop enrichment and develop a potential nuclear weapon, those facilities are still destroyed. Their conventional military is still destroyed. Their capacity to threaten their neighbors is still largely gone. And now we see whether they are willing to comply with the next step of the president's peace plan.
Continuing. That's the real-world test. More oil moving, lower gas prices, and Iran not firing on ships. Next, take a look at the traffic that is moving through the strait right now. It is active, buzzing like a bee. Oh, yes. Ship traffic officially resumes in the strait after U.S. and Iran sign the deal to end the war. So the map tells the story. Ships are moving again through one of the world's biggest choke points. Now the vice president takes on the media spin directly, saying Iran gets nothing unless it fully complies. This from the press briefing today.
Part of the peace plan, the part of this MOU that I think have been most misrepresented by certain parts of the media is the idea that the Iranians get all these benefits. You will hear things about $300 billion or $24 billion or this or that number of money or amount of money. And the simple fact is that the only way the Iranians get any of those resources, not a single penny, by the way, from the United States of America under any circumstances, but the only way that they would ever get any benefit of the bargain is if they comply fully and change their behavior. And so you really have a win-win situation for the United States of America. If the Iranians don't change their behavior, their military and their nuclear program is still destroyed. If they do change their behavior, then they are going to have a transformative relationship with the Middle East, and the Middle East will have a transformative relationship with the people of Iran. That's a win for the American people and for the President of the United States, regardless of which option the Iranians ultimately choose. We obviously want them to choose the right option. The interesting thing about their system, and I think it's important for the American people to appreciate this point in particular, is that there are real divisions, over the last couple of months, is that the pragmatists within the Iranian system, the people who really do want to transform their relationship with the Middle East and with the world, those people the argument. The United States wants those people to win the argument. The United States wants to have a better relationship, but in order for that to happen, the Iranians have to perform. And if they don't perform, as we've said before, they don't get any of the benefits of the bargain. So what I ask all of you is just to report honestly that the United States isn't giving up a cent of money to Iran, and even the economic benefits, the sanctions relief and so forth that comes along with this bargain
So
only happens if the Iranians perform.
I want to point out that the MOU also contains no restrictions on Iran's ballistic missile program, no requirement that Hezbollah or other Iranian-backed groups disarm, no detailed prohibition on future support for those groups, no concrete human rights commitments, and no guaranteed permanently toll-free navigation through Hormuz after the initial 60 days. And also, some of the language, too, it says that they are freezing their nuclear program. Now, I find that language interesting because it almost leaves the door open for them to have some type of nuclear program. Not necessarily a nuclear weapons program, but a civilian program. So there are some concerns that I have uncovered. We'll have to see how this really shakes out in the 60 days. But after seeing the shipping resume, here's the key question: who actually gets paid? The next clip answers it head on. Not one U.S. penny and no benefits for Tehran without total compliance. Here's more from the Vice President at the press briefing today.
We believe international waterways should be free of tolls, and that's been our position. That's what you see, of course, in the 60 days of the MOU. And when you say it leaves it open, it doesn't really leave it open, except in the sense that, of course, the final negotiation is going to set the terms of what comes afterwards, right? You said, I think that it's the Omanis and the Iranians, but it's actually the MOU contemplates that the Omanis, the Iranians, and the Gulf Coast Coalition together will figure out a proper security framework for the Straits in the future. And what I mean by that is that we don't ever want this to happen again. Right? That's not about tolling. That's about ensuring that the Straits are never used as a choke point for the global economy ever again. It's frankly not what the Iranians want. It's not what the Omanis want. It's not what the GCC wants either. So what we're going to do, of course, working with our allies in the region, is to ensure that that is reflected in the final deal. And if that's not reflected in the final deal, there's not going to be a final deal. And that is, I keep coming back to this fundamental structural point of this negotiation, which is that we have all the cards. If the Iranians want the benefits of the bargain, they have to give us the things that are necessary to get those benefits.
So despite the media fear campaign, the leverage stays with America next. The Vice President zeroes in on the Strait itself, saying no tolls, no future chokehold on the global economy.
We destroyed a substantial number of their ballistic missiles and their ballistic missile launchers themselves. It's not just the bullets, but it's the actual gun. And that's what we were extremely effective at in destroying during the last 3 months of the campaign. All the president said yesterday is that, of course, countries don't give up the right of self-defense. Israel doesn't give up the right of self-defense if Hezbollah fires rockets or drones at Israel. The Iranians don't give up the right of self-defense in their country, but we do expect that as part of the final deal, they are not going to be able to build the kind of missiles that can broadly threaten the entire world. And that's what the President of the United States said yesterday. And look, I mean, it's very simple. You can't tell a country, whether Israel or Iran, they're not allowed to have any self-defense. That's not what the President has asked. That's not what the President has requested. But as part of the final deal, what we want to see is Iran not funding regional instability, funding regional terrorism, and of course trying to rebuild their nuclear weapons program. That's the main thing. The nuclear weapons program is destroyed. It is gone. If the Iranians decided tomorrow to build a nuclear weapon, they simply don't have the capacity in order to do that. What we're trying to ensure is they don't rebuild that capacity, not just a year from now, 2 years from now, but many, many years from now, so that our children never have to worry about a state sponsor of terrorism having a nuclear weapon.
So keeping Hormuz open is step one, but Trump world says the military pressure isn't going anywhere. Next, the vice president explains what was destroyed and why Iran won't be allowed to rebuild missiles that threaten the world.
They would have to get a lot of money in order to rebuild their nuclear program. You're talking about billions and billions of nuclear infrastructure that the United States destroyed. In order for them to rebuild that program, they would have to get a lot of money. And we have them in an economic chokehold right now that we're not going to release until they fundamentally change their behavior. What would that look like? That would mean a real inspections regime. That would mean a real enforcement regime. As the MOU contemplates, that would mean the destruction of their enriched stockpile. All of these things are the sorts of steps you're going to take if you're serious about ending your nuclear weapons program. And that, again, is why I go back to this fundamental trade that's built into the deal. They need money to do anything. Their economy is in absolute dire straits. But in order for them to get any integration into the world economy, they're going to have to show us and verify for us that they are changing their behavior. And that's why the deal is set up in the way that it is.
So it matters because this is not just about shipping lanes, it's about making sure the regime stays boxed in. Next, the vice president lays out the economic chokehold, real inspections, and what enforcement would actually require.
The difference between the two agreements. So, first of all, the two big differences are not even in the substance of the deal itself, but something I said earlier are, number one, the Gulf Coast Coalition loves this deal because they think that it makes Iran weaker. They hated the Obama deal because they thought that it made Iran stronger. They know more about this, and they have more to lose than anybody, including the United States of America, so I trust their judgment. The second thing is where the deal came from. You have to remember, in 2015, Iran had built a sophisticated nuclear weapons program with a nuclear weapons stockpile. So the perspective that we came at as the United States was, you already have a really nice nuclear program, we're going to bribe you with American money in order to stop it. Our perspective and where we're coming at it is, we already destroyed your nuclear program. And so if you promise and show verifiable pathways to not rebuild it, then we're willing to give you some sanctions relief and things like that. So it's a fundamentally different perspective. Now, there are all these substantive differences as well. The Obama nuclear deal allowed enrichment. Ours will not. The Obama deal allowed the accumulation of stockpiled weapons-grade material. Ours is actually leading to the destruction of that stockpile of enriched material. So there are many differences. The Obama deal gave them over $1 billion of American money. This deal gives them $0 of American money. So a lot of substantive differences, but I think the most important differences are where we're coming at it from a position of strength and the fact that our Gulf Coast partners love this deal.
So the formula, pressure first, relief after the proof. Next, he draws the contrast. Establishment Republicans and Democrats can't dodge. This is not Obama's cash for chaos. JCPOA.
Say to anybody, any of the critics, is number one, have a little bit of faith in the President of the United States. The idea that he is going to strike a deal that's been bad for the American people, it's preposterous. He is the person who has had the courage to fundamentally transform our relationship with Iran and with a lot of other countries over the last year and a half. He believes in this deal. He is going to see it to completion. And if the Iranians don't comply, we still have every single tool and point of leverage that we have today. That'd be message number one, is have a little faith in the president's ability, given that he's got us this far, to take us the final step. The second thing that I would say is so many of what I've read or heard that people believe about this deal is just fundamentally untrue. It is a memorandum of understanding. It is fundamentally a principle that, yes, the Straits of Hormuz are going to be open immediately, and they already are. Yes, they're going to give up their highly enriched material, but they've got to actually do it. It's about conduct. It's about rewarding good conduct and punishing bad conduct, which in some ways is what we've been doing for the last 3 months vis-a-vis that country anyway. So many of the criticisms, I saw Lindsey Graham came out with a positive statement after expressing some concerns. I think that when people get to understand not just the agreement, but our negotiating posture as a country, they will realize this is an excellent thing for the American people, but that's part of our job. We've got to tell the story about what this means for Americans, how it's going to make all of us safer and more prosperous. That's why I'm here talking to everybody, and we're going to keep on telling that story in the days and weeks to come.
So we have this. This is the full letter. Iran posting the executed memorandum of understanding, which has now taken effect. Multiple points laid out here. And as I stated before, they have the decisive question is whether Washington uses the next 60 days to obtain a quantified and rapid reduction of Iran's enriched stockpile, intrusive and continuing IAEA access, firm enrichment ceiling and limits on centrifuges and facilities, automatic restoration of sanctions for noncompliance, permanent free passage through Hormuz, enforceable provisions concerning missiles and attacks by regional partners. So that is what we're looking at, and with the signing of the agreement, we have this news that the Secret Service has removed the expanded perimeter security around the White House. It's been in place since the start of the hostilities. U.S. Secret Service and MPD cruisers no longer at checkpoints this morning. And as I was just there at the White House this past weekend, security was everywhere. It was tight. So now with the signing of the memorandum, there is renewed faith in Washington, D.C. So the moral test here is brutally simple. Do you trust Donald Trump, who destroyed billions and billions of Iran's nuclear infrastructure, wiped out a substantial number of ballistic missiles and launchers, kept sanctions leverage in place, and said flat out that if Iran blows the 60-day deal, we go back to bombing? Or do you trust Barack Obama's disciples and the media clerks who sold Americans the JCPOA disaster and now fake confusion over the phrase, not a single penny, right? See, Donald Trump posted it himself. Oil is flowing. Iran can never have a nuclear weapon. Stock markets are roaring. That's not chest thumping. That was a receipt. Shipping reopened, oil tumbled, gas dropped, even the expanded White House perimeter started coming down. Strength changed the facts on the ground. The anti-Trump class got caught worshiping failure again. So friends, celebrate the win. Then stay hard, because Trump's victory only holds if enforcement stays ruthless. No softness, no slippage, no regime press fairy tales about goodwill. JD Vance laid out the terms with total clarity. Not a single penny from the United States unless Iran fully complies. Real inspections, real enforcement, destruction of the enriched stockpile, no rebuilt missile threat, and every tool still sitting on the table if Tehran plays games. And that's why patriots back President Trump. He understands leverage in his bones. He doesn't bribe enemies first, then beg for promises later. He breaks their leverage, lowers your gas bill, reopens the waterway, and dares them to cheat. If CNN, MSNBC, or the Obama Alumni Club hate that, good. Let them choke on 12.5 million barrels moving through Hormuz in a market hitting records. So drop your take in the comments and send this to people still parroting the Trump-funded Iran lie, and watch what happens when America acts like America again. And since you're still here, a special treat for you. Text raw feed to 844-840-4963. That's how we're bypassing the algorithm and getting you the news you depend on when the notifications from YouTube don't arrive. I will make sure you get them. And since we're celebrating wins, celebrate America 250 with the Next News Network by going to the merch shelf below this video or shop.nextnewsnetwork.com. All right. So we've got that good news. I do have, I just don't know. I don't know if we're going to have to go back to bombing. Personally, I don't trust Iran. Like, I was reading some of your comments as they were coming in with respect to, you could have rogue elements inside of Iran who have broken away from the so-called leadership there, militant organizations, the IRGC, or rogue generals that want to destroy this entire process. So we'll have to wait and see. This is a wait and see moment. All right, Brian, I'm ready to go on to the next topic here. Michelle Obama's $1 million secret is now getting exposed. Michelle Obama gave the game away with one word, me. And right on cue, the Obama machine flipped out over a UFC fighter shouting, "Michelle Obama is a man." Am I right, America? Right from the octagon on the White House lawn. That blunt line triggered lawsuit chatter, pearl clutching, and elite panic. Fine, but while the media chases the insult, Barack Obama's Vanity Center in Chicago sits there like an $850 million monument to ego, with minority subcontractors saying they're owed millions and promised taxpayer backstop sitting at just $1 million. So ask yourself, why does Obama world want America staring at the joke instead of the bill? Why? Because this story hits the wallet. It hits it hard. Barack Obama and Michelle Obama spent years selling themselves as untouchable royalty, the sainted faces of the regime, the couple nobody can mock and nobody can question. Meanwhile, the Obama Presidential Center ballooned from $330 million to at least $850 million. The promised $470 million endowment that was supposed to shield the Chicago taxpayers under a 99-year deal sits at just $1 million. That's not a cushion, that's a bad punchline. And the people getting crushed are not hedge fund consultants, they're local firms, minority-owned subcontractors, union workers. Omar Sharif of the African American Contractors Association put it perfectly. What sense is celebrating Juneteenth if our black contractors are not getting their money? That line detonates the whole Obama pose. Barack Obama gets his monument, Michelle Obama gets her image protection squad, Chicago gets risk. Small businesses get drained reserves, layoffs, mortgages on the line, and financial ruin. And that's how the left governs. Racial theater up front, invoices buried in the back. And while these elites burn cash on vanity projects and PR shields, regular Americans are hunting for things that actually help real families. You've probably seen the clip, Joe Rogan sitting with Mel Gibson talking about people close to him who went through serious health struggles and then saw dramatic turnarounds. Rogan brings up light-based therapies and how they impact the body at a cellular level. And Gibson says it straight, the stuff works. And that got my attention because in my own life I watched something very similar unfold. For a long time my wife was dealing with constant discomfort and anxiety. It was one of those battles that wears a family down. And then we looked into red light therapy. Big difference. If you want to learn more, check out the countless interviews I've done with Jonathan right here on this channel. But really go to the resource at myredlight.com. Go there, check it out, and use NNN25 for individual items or NNN30 for bundles. When the system fails you, practical solutions matter, and that is one worth your time. Now here's the part that makes the whole thing impossible to ignore. As the Obama Center opened today, they stopped to honor the original inhabitants of the land. Yes, in a glowing land acknowledgement. Think about that. Barack Obama's team staged elite ceremonial theater about the soil under their feet, while contractors who actually poured, built, wired, and hauled for this monument say they still haven't been paid. That's the Obama formula in one frame. Symbolism for the cameras, pain for the workers. We're going to pull up the tweets because the internet's caught this scam faster than the corporate press ever would. So we're learning this now. Of course, you know about the UFC comments. The Obamas are reportedly considering a defamation lawsuit against Josh Hokett, the UFC and Paramount, after he shouted Michelle Obama is a man during the UFC fight at the White House. So Obama's reportedly talking lawsuit over the UFC moment. Here's the clip that set them off.
Michelle Obama is a man. Am I right, America?
Oh, that clip is going to last forever. He said it, and now the internet's asking why the Obama camp's so rattled. Next, Michelle gives her own one-word answer about the next chapter. Describe your next chapter in one word.
One word to describe your next chapter. One word.
Fun.
Me.
That's what you call drop the mic.
Oh, drop the
You seem to be grading her higher on her answer.
Oh, drop the mic. Oh, yeah. Softballs all day long. Why don't you ask Barack about his time in the backseat of that limousine with the crack pipe? Anyway, after the me moment, the focus shifts from image to legacy. Barack Obama's presidential center opening in Chicago, contractors say the whole thing has turned into an expensive mess. Barack Hussein Obama's trash can presidential center opening in Chicago. Black contractors are furious, saying we haven't been paid.
Will be holding its grand opening ceremony as concerns over the costs for the project grow.
Todd Pyro thought he was getting an invitation. He did not, so he's going to tell us what happened.
Stunned.
Right.
Could not believe it. I've been waiting in my office for it to arrive, and I'm going to talk to Mail later on today. Well, after years of waiting and millions of dollars spent, the Barack Obama Presidential Center finally set to open to the public tomorrow after today's dedication ceremony right in the heart of the south side of Chicago. It's the most expensive presidential library in modern history, as construction costs have reportedly ballooned from $330 million to at least $850 million. Although an updated final projected cost has not yet been made public, it all comes as some subcontractors are claiming they have not yet been paid for the work they have done.
So many of our black contractors are complaining about they have not got their money. But the other side of it, a lot of the black community and the newspapers do not know that these people have not been paid. Contractors are already in bankruptcy. That's what they're saying, that if it wasn't the fact that they worked on this Obama project, they would not be under this type of problem.
And now the Obama Foundation tells Fox News Digital that it paid Lakeside Alliance, a local construction company, as the project's construction manager, and that Lakeside was responsible for hiring, managing, and paying subcontractors working on the center. Despite all these supposed issues, former presidents Joe Biden, George Bush, and Bill Clinton all slated to attend today's ceremony. Doors officially open to the public tomorrow morning.
I can't wait to go. So you heard about the ballooning price tag, the unpaid contractors, and somehow the grand opening still kicks off with the usual left-wing ritual, a land acknowledgement.
We'd also like to take a moment to recognize the original inhabitants of the land upon which we are gathered today. We honor the Anishinaabe, the Council of Three Fires, the Ojibwe, the Odawa, and the Potawatomi nations.
Makes you want to puke. But that was the tone of the ceremony. But the money problem's not going away. Next, more reporting on the subcontractors who say they're owed millions of dollars. Obama Presidential Center subcontractors claim they're owed millions and facing financial ruin. So while the Obama machine celebrates, the bills are still hanging out there. Now Fox digs into the taxpayer risk too, with the promised endowment sitting at just a fraction of what was sold to the public.
I feel like an aluminum can that's been thrown in front of a steamroller. We're crushed.
Mike Owen, Adamson Plumbing.
Just on our internals, the overall monies expended on this project have now reached nearly $4 million in the red. That's in totality over the last 5 years. That is a hole that no subcontractor, small business can survive. And unfortunately, my losses are on the smaller side compared to some of my peers. I think the goal at one point was to break even. Now it's just to survive.
Wow. Losses could lead to layoffs.
Financially, our reserves have been completely drained. We are barely getting by right now. Unfortunately, we're probably going to have to lay off union workers here in the short term so that we can regroup and lick our wounds and hopefully live to fight another day. That's where we're at. For me, I know for a fact it's been an emotional roller coaster, and I'm cooked emotionally. And I have to fight for my company and for my people, and that's what I'm doing today. I believe my peers, just through internal conversations with them, are deeper in the red. I think also my peers have a little bit more pressure on them to maybe keep things more in-house, and I completely understand that. But as for me and my company, I'm at the end of my rope, and
So, subcontractors not getting paid, and that $470 million endowment sits at $1 million. Subcontractors claim they're owed millions days before the grand opening. So it's not just a funding gap in paper. The people who built it say they're getting crushed. Next, one contractor's advocate lays out how minority-owned firms are being left twisting in the wind. Here's another one.
To know why they're not getting paid, and what sense is celebrating Juneteenth if our black contractors are not getting their money. My name is Omar Sharif, president of the African American Contract Association. I've been in business since 1989. I never seen this happen since I've been in business. Even when I worked with the Chicago Urban League, so many of our black contractors are complaining about they have not got their money. But the other side of it, a lot of the black community and the newspapers do not know that these people have not been paid. Some of the people have put their mortgages up. They're going to lose their bonding, their rate in their bonding company. They're going to lose their relationship with their supplier, as well as their banker may want to bring in their note. So they're afraid to talk about these things, but they tell me in privacy that these things are taking place with them. And they're scared to death about talking about it, some of them. Someone will hang up the phone on you and just say, I don't want to talk about that, and bye. Yeah, we met with them on several terms, but that's when they told us they had to stop conversation about it because they all signed a non-disclosure. And
they're all a non-disclosure. So the contractors say the project brought pride at first and pain after, and the backlash online is just as brutal. Critics mocking the center as one giant garbage can. Now, if you could only teach a libtard how to actually use a garbage can. Take a look at this picture. Yeah, that sums it up pretty well, doesn't it? So the moral verdict lands right there between two words, me and money. Michelle Obama, she says that her next chapter is me. Omar Sharif asks, what sense is celebrating Juneteenth if our black contractors aren't getting their money? Those two lines tell you the entire story of Barack Obama's presidential center better than any glossy brochure ever will. Barack Obama built a monument to himself. Michelle Obama demands reverence. The Obama Foundation says the center is fully funded, while the endowment meant to protect taxpayers sits at $1 million against a promised $470 million backstop. That gap is not bookkeeping. That gap is the Obama brand image first. See, accountability never, and when anybody laughs, mocks, or punctures the mythology, the machine lunges for lawsuits instead of answers. So here's where this goes next. Chicago officials need to name every subcontractor still waiting on payment, state the exact amount owed, and explain who signed off on opening the center under a cloud of unpaid bills. Barack Obama needs to answer for the 99-year taxpayer exposure. The Obama Foundation needs to explain how fully funded squares with a $1 million endowment where a $470 million shield was promised. Michelle Obama's camp can save the legal threats for somebody else. Americans heard the UFC outburst fine. They can survive a joke. What working people cannot survive is getting steamrolled so powerful Democrats can cut ribbons in front of a vanity project. Trump draws crowds because people feel strength, loyalty, and love of country. The Obama machine demands worship while businesses bleed out behind the stage. So share this segment and send it to anyone still hypnotized by the Obama myth, and keep your eye on the invoices, because that's where the masks come off. And if you've signed up for this insider alert system that we built, keep your eye on your phone. Text raw feed to 844-840-4963. We're cutting out the middleman, going direct to you. When the notifications from YouTube never arrive, I will send them direct to you. And it's time to celebrate America 250 with the Next News Network. Check out the merch shelf below this video, or just go to shop.nextnewsnetwork.com.
Michelle Obama is a man. Am I right, America?
Oh man, that's never going to get old. That is never going to get old. All right. Speaking of cleaning things up, we need to talk about what's going on at that reflecting pool. Did you hear about that? Yeah, that green sludge has returned. But fear not, fellow patriots, help is on the way. CNN grabbed a water sample from the Lincoln reflecting pool and hauled it to a pool store like they had cracked Watergate. That actually happened. While Trump's crews stood in the water vacuuming dead algae, the Interior Department says the advanced nano bubbler already killed. Yes, CNN turned the routine cleanup into a gotcha opera because July 4th is coming and the regime press can't stomach a patriotic win in front of Lincoln. And then it got even dumber. A literal post-algae protest of 3 popped up at the pool. 3. If you want the cleanest snapshot of modern media rot and left-wing American hatred, you're looking straight at green water and a panicked camera crew. So the story matters because the target is not a pool. The target's your morale. The Lincoln reflecting pool sits in the heart of the Capitol, in front of Abraham Lincoln, with the Washington Monument lined up behind it and the country still heading toward July 4th and America 250. Trump's people are restoring a national symbol. American workers are pushing around the clock. The Department of Interior flat out said the advanced nano-bubbler technology killed the algae, and crews are now vacuuming up the dead algae from the bottom. Simple, clear, fixed. And CNN still rushed to independently take a water sample and get a pool store test because Dana Bash's class of regime scavengers would rather sell national embarrassment than let Donald Trump get credit for making Washington shine again. Same pattern we hammered in our June 9th Lincoln Memorial coverage. Same pattern we hit in our Minnesota fraud and Gavin Newsom panic this week. When blue state corruption explodes, the press looks away. When patriots clean sludge out of a public landmark, CNN grabs a beaker and starts performing forensic cosplay. And while we're talking about cleaning out what doesn't belong, I'm going to show you something that grabbed my attention in my own life. You've probably seen the clip, Joe Rogan sitting with Mel Gibson talking about people close to him who went through serious health struggles and then saw dramatic turnarounds. Rogan brings up light-based therapies and how they impact the body at a cellular level. Gibson says it's straight the stuff works, and that got my attention because in my own life I watched something very similar unfold. For a long time, my wife was dealing with constant discomfort and anxiety, one of those draining battles that wears on a family. And then I started digging into red light therapy through Jonathan Otto. And if you want to learn more, simply head to myredlight.com. Use NNN25 for individual items or NNN30 for bundles. Clean energy, no circus, just something worth checking out. Now back to the circus at the reflecting pool where the media treated dead algae like a 5-alarm constitutional crisis. See, here's the detail that torches this whole scam. The Trump Interior Department didn't just say the cleanup worked, it mocked the meltdown with one line nobody in legacy media can live down. Interior said the crews are vacuuming dead algae resting on the bottom of the reflecting pool, just like they destroyed the Iranian Navy resting on the bottom of the Persian Gulf. That line landed because it's true on both counts. Trump's team killed the problem. CNN filmed the leftovers. And while the cameras obsessed over green water, leftist threats got serious enough that National Guard and Park Police patrols increased at the site. We've got the tweets because the public spotted the con instantly. Macy Gunnell, she says, yes, the reflecting pool is green. No, nothing went wrong.
After seeing this headline, I had to come and run and see for myself. So yes, the headline is true. The water is green. However, I do want to show you guys that this is actually part of the process there in the middle. You can see it back there. They're in the middle of cleaning out the pipes. So no, nothing went wrong. Don't fall for whatever liberal skew they try to pull on you. Don't be panicking. Just trust the process. It's going to look spotless again here just in a few days.
So the green water isn't some disaster. It's all part of the cleanup. Now Emily Miller shows the crew in the pool vacuuming up the dead algae and working the middle trench. So the pool is finishing vacuuming up the dead algae from the nano bubble on the sides there in waders. You saw the workers doing the job. Next, CNN tries to turn pipe cleanup into a gotcha, complete with its own water sample and a pool store test. Based Bandita says this: the fact that CNN investigated, then tested the color and quality of the reflecting pool water more than the billions in fraud happening in states like Minnesota and California should tell you everything you need to know about the hacks that they are. Watch this.
And we're going to scoop up a water sample to see if we can get this tested.
CNN independently took the sample of water and consulted with a pool store that regularly tests water to help read the results. It showed phosphate levels far higher than what is recommended to keep algae at bay based on estimates for a pool that holds 6.5 million gallons of water.
If there's already some phosphate fertilizer in the water, that's really opportunistic, especially for the blue-green algae that can fix nitrogen. So they are having a field day out here, probably.
The Department of Interior says they believe some of the initial problem was residual algae that had accumulated in pipes and insists the filtration system called the ozone nanobubbler is working.
So while CNN was busy cosplay investigating algae, the circus moved in. Emily Miller catches a tiny pro-algae protest at the reflecting pool because of course it did. Oh my goodness. Wow. So yes, even the protest side looked ridiculous, but the next clip shows why security is tightening, with National Guard and Park Police patrols increasing amid leftist sabotage threats. The Lincoln Memorial reflecting pool under increased National Guard and Park Police patrol amid leftist threats. American workers are pushing around the clock to finish the pool by July 4th, but liberals have vested interest in destroying it for some reason. Video filmed at 2:06 a.m. this morning. So you can see the patrols around the reflecting pool, keeping the unhinged leftists at bay. And the duck. Totally unfazed. So after the overnight security push and the round-the-clock work, the Interior Department comes in with the facts. They say the nanobubbler killed the algae, the water is clear, and crews are just vacuuming the bottom clean. The advanced nanobubbler technology very effectively killed the algae that has plagued every Lincoln reflecting pool reopening, most infamously Obama's reopening since 1922. The reflecting pool water is crystal clear, and our National Park Service team is now vacuuming the dead algae resting on the bottom of some parts of the pool, just like the destroyed Iranian Navy resting on the bottom of the Persian Gulf. So here's the picture that was posted along with that from the Interior Department. So the moral verdict lands right there in one humiliating image. Workers in waders vacuuming dead algae while CNN plays pool chemist and three pro-algae hecklers stage a toddler protest. Jake Tapper's network had energy for a water sample. CNN had energy for phosphate chatter about a 6.5 million gallon pool. CNN had energy for turning maintenance into scandal theater, but when fraud machines churn in Minnesota, when Gavin Newsom panics under scrutiny, when the left hijacks patriotic spaces, that same press corps goes limp. Donald Trump's administration restored the pool. Doug Burgum's Interior team told the country exactly what happened. The media Democrat sabotage machine still rooted for the slime. Okay, that's not journalism. That is cultural vandalism with a press badge and a camera tripod. So here's the split, okay? Here's the split on your screen and in the country. Trump's people clean, restore, secure, and finish. American crews stand in the water and do the job before July 4th. National Park Service teams vacuum the dead algae. National Guard and Park Police step up when leftist threats start circling. And on the other side, CNN scoops murky water into a sample cup. The miserable anti-American class cheers for embarrassment. And a pro-algae protest of 3 tries to turn Lincoln's front yard into a meme. It's pathetic. If anybody threatened that site or tried to sabotage that project, the Trump administration needs names, arrests, and consequences. No indulgence, no shrug. This country has had enough of people who sneer at every act of national repair. So share this with somebody who still thinks the legacy press just made an innocent mistake, because nobody independently takes pool water to a store unless they're desperate to stop a Trump win. And make sure you stay connected with us at the Next News Network. Text raw feed to 844-840-4963. We're cutting out the middleman, going direct to you. When those notifications don't arrive from YouTube, I'll send them direct. All right, continuing here. And my bad. Yeah, of course, we're celebrating. America 250 is upon us. Make sure you check out the Next News merch shelf below this video, or go to shop.nextnewsnetwork.com. Almost got ahead of myself there. I still can't believe CNN would go in there. I mean, they are so desperate to try to frame this as a fail. They're looking everywhere. Even going to a pool store to have an independent verification. Seriously. And speaking of failures, we need to talk about what happened. We get another update with respect to immigration, but a wild revelation about the UFC fight, and one of the individuals caught up in that. An on-air leftist looked into a camera and said illegal aliens are not people who are putting us in any jeopardy, and that it's Donald Trump who's putting us in jeopardy. Then almost instantly, DHS blew that lie to pieces. The alleged ringleader in the UFC Freedom 250 terror plot at the White House was Abraham Hermosillo Alvarez, an illegal alien from Mexico who got to stay under Obama-era DACA. Not a paperwork glitch, not a misunderstanding. Investigators say this crew planned explosive drones, a mass evacuations, victims funneled towards snipers, and then a rush onto the White House gates. And that quote is the receipt, and Democrats own it. See, the story matters because the open borders machine did not just flood the country with chaos. It put the seat of American government and American families in the kill zone. DHS spelled it out with brutal clarity. Alvarez should never have been allowed in our country. And DHS named him the ringleader of a failed terror attack targeting UFC freedom at the White House. And there it is. Barack Obama's amnesty pipeline did not produce compassion. It protected a man federal authorities tied to a staged mass casualty plot. And the plan was not random madness. Investigators uncovered a sequence. Explosive drones first, then a mass evacuation, then victims pushed towards snipers, and then a storming of the gates of the White House. That is war planning on American soil, yet MSNBC-style mouthpieces spent years torching border enforcement while smearing Donald Trump as the danger. They lied. They laundered the lie. They weaponized that lie against every parent, every cop, every citizen who demanded a border. Well, Trump, he shut the scam down. The former Obama-Biden border cult, they built it. And when the political class trashes the truth this hard, I pay even closer attention to solutions that deliver results in the real world. You've probably seen the clip, Joe Rogan sitting with Mel Gibson, talking about people close to him who went through serious health struggles and then saw dramatic turnarounds. Rogan brings up red light-based therapies and how they impact the body at a cellular level. And Gibson just says it straight, the stuff works. And that got my attention. In my own home, I watched something similar. My wife dealt with constant discomfort and anxiety, and it wore her down. Then we found red light therapy through Jonathan Otto, and it made a difference that we could actually feel. If you want to check it out, go to myredlight.com, use NNN25 for individual items or NNN30 for bundles. In a country drowning in fake promises, I respect tools that help real families fight back and feel stronger again. Take a look for yourself at myredlight.com, because strength at home matters when everything outside the home feels under siege. Now back to the part the corporate press wants buried. The sickest detail was not just the drones, it was the funnel investigators say the attack aimed to trigger. Panic, force mass evacuation, and drive human beings towards snipers before a charge at the White House gates. That's not a border debate. That is an imported threat infrastructure. And I'm going to show you, I'm going to pull up the posts and the tweets, and I'm going to let the entire country see exactly who sold this poison and who cleaned up the mess. MS Now guest, this is from townhall.com. Undocumented immigrants are not people who are putting us in jeopardy. It's Donald Trump. A few moments later.
Just trying to escape persecution, build a better life for themselves. If they're guilty of anything, it's that they fled economic misery and poverty instead of torture and war. They are not people who are putting us in any jeopardy. It's Donald Trump who's putting us in jeopardy.
News alert, DHS confirming the suspected ringleader accused in a plot to carry out a mass casualty attack at the UFC event at the White House on Sunday is an illegal immigrant.
A federal investigation into Sunday's alleged terror plot on the UFC South Lawn event remains ongoing. Investigators looking into how this transpired, what was planned, as well as believing that many as 20 people may have been involved. Our colleagues over at Fox Digital report the alleged ringleader of this incident, Abraham Alvarez, was in the country illegally from Mexico, but also may have been granted DACA status, allowed to stay back in the Obama administration. He was arrested back in Omaha, Nebraska, and we expect to learn more about his background as the head of the UFC says security was certainly top of mind.
How's that for a split screen? There it is. The media said illegal immigrants weren't the threat, and then DHS ties the White House UFC terror plot to a DACA recipient from Mexico. Now, the operational details, the ringleader of the White House UFC Freedom 250 explosive drone terror plot is a Mexican illegal alien, a violent invader who was granted status under Obama.
Used in an alleged terror plot against the UFC Freedom 250 event at the White House is due in court today.
Alexandria Hoff joins us now with the details from Washington. Good morning, Alex.
Good morning. And hey, listen, there are 5 suspects behind bars in this, but authorities say that they're looking for more people due to the group chat they uncovered having 23 members in it. Today, 32-year-old Daniel Eskridge is set to appear before a judge today on conspiracy charges. Court documents state that Eskridge posted to that Signal chat the plan was to wage war on an illegitimate government. The men arrested in the plot also include a 19-year-old from Ohio, a 24-year-old and 32-year-old, both from California, and a 31-year-old from Nebraska. Now, this terror was set to unfold in stages. We've learned this attack by explosives raining down. That would be the first thing. They would come down from drones at or near the UFC event at the White House Sunday, which would then force a mass evacuation, at which time attackers would storm the White House gate and snipers target administration officials, other high-valued individuals. UFC President Dana White is praising the FBI for their action in foiling this plot. They say that he says that there were additional threats made on that event. Listen.
Did you have any idea that this was happening? Somebody was apparently planning to do something horrible on Sunday.
Yeah, there was more than that. There was more than that.
It was more than that. So you saw how sick the plot allegedly was, with attackers trying to turn panic into a kill zone. Next, House Republicans put the ringleader front and center, remind Americans exactly what Obama's amnesty machine produced. Take a hard look at this arrogant grin, America. Look at this guy. That's his mugshot. This is the face of an illegal alien who came here as a child, got special Obama amnesty in 2014, and repaid America by leading a terror plot against the White House during UFC Freedom 250. Next time you hear Democrats preach about compassion for illegals, remember this mug shot and the smug terrorist smiling. The same man who wanted to turn a celebration of freedom into a bloodbath on the White House lawn. So the mug shot's the answer to every left-wing sermon about compassion without consequences. Meanwhile, while the left smears ICE as villains, watch what one ICE officer did when a child was drowning in Florida. While the left screams defund ICE and calls them Nazi, this ICE officer jumped into a Florida pool to save a drowning kid. Officer Gregory Simmons. Wow. So after all the anti-ICE propaganda, this footage shows the truth. An officer jumped in without hesitation. Up next, you'll hear Gregory Simmons himself describe the split-second decision that saved a 6-year-old child's life.
Were there to do this at the time that you did. Walk us through what took place in real time.
Yes, thank you for having me. Basically, I was just at my son's soccer end of the year soccer party. What prompted me to go near the pool? I mean, I saw a pool attendant there. He was kind of pointing at something in the pool. I thought he was maybe pointing at my son and his friends, so I walked over to the pool. I immediately noticed something was wrong. There was kind of like a sixth sense going on. There was one of my son's teammates was right next to the child, so I had him, hey, can you go touch that kid? And when the child touched him, immediately I knew something was wrong. I jumped into the pool, swam over as quick as I could. When I picked up the kid, his body condition at that time, I knew immediately that this kid's going to need some sort of CPR.
Oh my gosh. So you performed that CPR, Gregory, and then thankfully the child regained consciousness. How did you feel when he took his first breath?
I mean, I was absolutely relieved. I mean, I was at the right place at the right time. I'm just glad this kid have a second chance at life. I mean, it was truly remarkable.
Gregory, did you talk to his parents at all? What did they say to you?
Yes, I didn't talk to the parents immediately after, because when EMS services came, they kind of took the parent and child away. But yeah, I did speak with the parent. She had some really emotional text messages that she provided for me. Wow. She was just happy that
this little boy's going to be okay.
So he acted on instinct and gave the boy a second chance, which is more than the open border crowds ever gives law-abiding citizens. Now look overseas, where Europe is moving towards swift removals instead of endless excuses. Just in, the EU Parliament votes to advance the Re-Migration Act, allowing swift removal of immigrants. So Europe isn't whispering anymore. It's voting to send illegal migrants back, and the reaction inside the chamber says it all, with chants breaking out as the deportation push advances. Wow. Talk about President Trump's influence on the world stage. So the chants weren't subtle. They reflect the public fed up with leaders putting foreigners ahead of citizens. Back at home, ICE in Dallas just tracked down an 18th Street gang member wanted for multiple homicides after Sanctuary, Minnesota let him slip away. ICE Dallas arrested Salvadorian fugitive, U.S. fugitive, 18th Street gang member Jose Mauricio Carrillo Mendoza in a targeted immigration enforcement operation June 2nd. The criminal illegal alien was wanted in his home country of El Salvador for multiple homicide charges. Also wanted for felony domestic assault in Sanctuary State, Minnesota, after they released him pending trial. Big surprise, he didn't stick around. The fugitive initially answered the door for a fugitive operations officer before slamming it closed and retreating. Our Dallas Special Response Team insisted and took him into custody. With a 2009 final removal order, multiple prior removals, and a laundry list of previous U.S. arrests, he now faces felony illegal reentry charges before his next and final deportation, thanks to POTUS closed borders. Watch. Here's the raid itself.
Open the door! Abre la puerta! Hey, hands up! Hey! With the warrant! Police! Come on, police! Hold up!
Gloria sea a ti. Le adoramos, Señor. Tuya la gloria.
A ver, ponte de pie.
Bye-bye. So the rest is exactly what real enforcement looks like. Targeted, aggressive, and overdue. Next, the FBI rolls out Operation Summer Heat 2.0. Roughly 500 agents moving on a violent D.C. crew tied to drugs, guns, and homicides. Today's forecast calls for coordinated enforcement, and our partners delivered. Approximately 500 FBI agents and law enforcement officers worked together this morning to dismantle a violent crew responsible for trafficking drugs and guns in the district. Today's arrests and searches were part of Operation Summer Heat 2.0, a nationwide initiative targeting violent criminals.
Cox, I'm the Assistant Director in charge of the FBI's Washington Field Office. It's early in the morning, and behind me you'll see the FBI SWAT team as they prepare, along with our partners from DEA and the Metropolitan Police Department, along with approximately 500 other agents and law enforcement officers, are going to be executing 20 search warrants and 17 arrest warrants this morning. These arrests and search warrants are on members of the 4th Street Southeast crew. They deal narcotics, they traffic in firearms, they have also been connected to homicides, robberies, and carjackings in the area. The FBI, in conjunction with our partners, are working this investigation as part of the DC Safe and Beautiful initiative and also our Homeland Security Task Force initiative to keep DC safe from these individuals who terrorize our community.
So here's the moral verdict, and it lands hard because the names are right there in front of us. Barack Obama's 2014 DACA machinery helped keep Abraham Alvarez in this country. Democrat politicians spent years screaming for more loopholes, more releases, more sanctuary protection. Media hacks barked that Trump was the threat. Then DHS identified an illegal alien from Mexico as the ringleader in a terror plot aimed at UFC Freedom 250 on White House grounds. Explosive drones, mass evacuation, victims pushed towards snipers, gates rushed. No decent American needs a seminar after that. The open borders crowd did not miscalculate. They endangered this country on purpose, then slandered everyone who fought back. Trump called it. Trump moved. And because Trump moved, the plot failed instead of ending in a slaughter on the South Lawn. So here is the line in the sand. Every Democrat, every network booker, every open borders activist who sold the country that illegal entry brings no danger owns a piece of this disgrace. They owe answers for the Obama DACA pipeline. They owe answers for sanctuary releases like Jose Mendoza, the 18th Street gang member wanted for multiple homicides and felony domestic assault after Minnesota cut him loose. And they owe an apology to the ICE officers they smeared as monsters while Gregory Simmons dove into a Florida pool and saved a 6-year-old life. Meanwhile, the Trump administration keeps doing the job. ICE hunts fugitives. Federal agents hammer violent crews. Europe is finally copying the enforcement first line with remigration because reality beats ideology every single time. So share this segment with people who still repeat the old propaganda quote. And put that quote beside Abraham Alvarez's name and let them choke on the contrast because the receipt is in plain view. I want to make sure you stay connected with the Next News Network. I set up this telephone number so that you and I can maintain connectivity when the notifications do not arrive. I want to make sure you get the news that we produce here. We spend a lot of time on it. We do it for you. So text raw feed to 844-840-4963 and then check out the Next News merch shelf below this video and celebrate America 250 with us by going to shop.nextnewsnetwork.com. Isn't that interesting, right? Obama's DACA program. That guy was the recipient of that, of the compassion, right? And how does he pay back America? By setting up a slaughter on the White House lawn. It's absolutely disgraceful. And speaking of disgrace, we need to talk about what's going on with Gavin Newsom. Oh yes, he is getting burned even by CNN of all outlets. So we're going to get into that right now. Even CNN just gutted Gavin Newsom's victim routine on live television. That is the detail. Not Fox, not conservative media, CNN. Jennifer Newsom's federal probe did not start because President Trump snapped his fingers. It started out of the U.S. Attorney Office in Sacramento after a whistleblower complaint. A whistleblower. And Gavin Newsom still ran to the cameras and tried to smear Trump anyway. It tells you everything. Innocent people bring receipts. Panicked Democrats launched diversion plays. And then you add the $3.7 million that Jennifer Newsom paid herself and her own company, and suddenly California's golden couple looks less like public servants and more like a nonprofit cash machine with very expensive branding. And the story matters for one reason above all. Democrats robbed ordinary Americans and then built a media shield to protect the racket. Gavin Newsom and Jennifer Seibel Newsom wrapped themselves in moral vanity projects, gender equity slogans, glossy documentaries, and elite nonprofit branding, while the money kept circling back inside the family orbit. Josh Boswell found Jennifer Newsom paid herself and her company $3.7 million since 2012. Her compensation landed in the top 5% nationwide for charities of that size. That's not some rounding error. That's the kind of number that makes working families stop cold. And then look at Gavin, his instinct. When the spotlight hit, he didn't open the books. He didn't welcome scrutiny. He pushed a cheap lie that Donald Trump personally ordered the Justice Department to target him. And then CNN blew it up. The probe started last year in Sacramento after a whistleblower complaint. So now the old Democrat script is dead. This is not persecution, this is panic. When California elites panic, taxpayers usually discover how many middlemen got rich pretending to care. And while we're talking about systems that either drain your strength or drain or strengthen you, let me pivot to something that actually helps real people instead of feeding another elite scam. You've probably seen the clip of Joe Rogan sitting with Mel Gibson, talking about people close to him who went through serious health struggles and then saw dramatic turnarounds. Rogan brings up red light-based therapies and how they impact the body at a cellular level. And Gibson says that straight the stuff works. And that got my attention because in my own life, I watched something very similar unfold. For a long time, my wife was dealing with constant discomfort and anxiety. It's one of those daily battles that wears a person down. And then I came across Jonathan Otto and red light therapy. We tried it, and the change was dramatic. If you want to check it out, go to myredlight.com. Use NNN25 for individual items or NNN30 for bundles. When the political class keeps failing people, I'm always going to point you towards tools that actually deliver in real life. Now back to Gavin Newsom, because the ugliest detail might be the one that his media friends hoped you'd miss. Jennifer Newsom was not just collecting serious money. Boswell found she was taking up to roughly a third of what that charity brought in during some years through herself and her own company. A third. And while Gavin screamed about Trump, another allegation hit California's nonprofit maze. Right? Cal volunteers and a claimed $500,000 fire aid laundering setup. We're going to pull up the tweets because once you see the names and the numbers together, the whole protection racket starts to crack on screen. Even CNN is rebutting Gavin Newsom's claim that Trump ordered the DOJ investigation. Listen to this.
Newsom, the wife of California's governor and potential 2028 presidential contender, Gavin Newsom is currently under federal investigation for possible tax crimes. The full scope of the investigation into the first partner is unclear. The documentary filmmaker founded Representation Project, a nonprofit focused on gender equity in media.
I love championing and focusing on uplifting and supporting women and girls.
She also owns a film production company called Girls Club Entertainment, which is listed as a contractor on the Representation Project's tax returns. And she co-founded the California Partners Project, a nonprofit that works to get more women onto corporate boards, address the gender pay gap, and make tech safer for children. Critics have raised the possibility of self-dealing for years, despite no public evidence of wrongdoing. While it is unclear what exactly investigators are focused on, they have recently interviewed potential witnesses, including people close to the first couple. Sources tell CNN that the governor is not directly under investigation, but he has framed the probe as politically motivated and targeting him.
Donald Trump isn't just coming after me because of my mean tweets. He's coming after me because I'm considering running for president.
The tax probe is not the only recent investigation into someone in Newsom's orbit. His former chief of staff, Dana Williamson, was recently prosecuted related to corruption. She pleaded guilty to 3 charges earlier this year. President Trump has made it clear he wants his Justice Department to pursue his political enemies. Just last year, he called for Newsom to be arrested and has attacked him repeatedly.
He's ruined California. He gives health care to anybody.
CNN has learned the current investigation was launched last year by the U.S. Attorney's Office in Sacramento based on a whistleblower report. Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche declined to answer questions Monday on Capitol Hill.
General Vance, can you confirm if this Justice Department is investigating Gavin Newsom? And if the president directed you to do this?
So Newsom's spin just got blown up on CNN. The probe started with a whistleblower, not Trump. Now Katie Pavlich digs into the money trail, claims Jennifer Newsom pulled $3.7 million from her own charity.
Did you look into Newsom's wife in the first place, and what did you find?
Well, there are just always a lot of questions that seem to be swirling around the Newsoms and their finances, have been for years. And so I thought, this is a man who clearly is going to be running for president. This is worth looking at, what their finances are, what the shape of them are. And so when I had a look at Jennifer Newsom's charity, I found that she was paying herself since 2012 $3.7 million. This is a lot of money when you look at the amount that the charity brings in. It's sort of 1 to 1.7 million a year. And she's paying up to a third of that to herself and her own company, $300,000 a year. Now, that is, I did a bit of data analysis looking at what charities that size usually pay their executives. And she was in the top 5% of all charities in the nation for pay.
So DOJ, of course, doesn't comment on the specifics of this. We've really only heard from Gavin Newsom claiming this investigation is targeting them, even though, as we mentioned, it started in 2022 in his orbit. Do you think that the charity is the reason DOJ might be investigating her?
There's a whole bunch of reasons, potentially. There are a lot of questions around their finances. So the charity could be one of them. Now, it is legal for a charity to pay whatever they want to their executives. But one of the issues they might be looking at is who are the donors to the charity that are financing that pay? What kind of relationships do they have with the California government that Newsom is in charge of? There's also, if you look at his income, and he's released at least, partly to journalists in closed door viewing sessions, his tax returns. And if you look at that, his income, it's about 1.2 to 1.4 million a year. And it just doesn't add up for all of his expenses. He's got massive mortgages, $625,000 in mortgage payments. He's got at least $1 million in living expenses. And the two just don't add up. I would be interested in that if I were an IRS investigator. One other thing to look at here is the way that his property transactions are structured lead to a lot of questions. When he bought his $3.7 million Sacramento estate, it was done through an LLC, but that LLC doesn't seem to have appeared on his tax returns. There's all kind of questions of why he would do it that way, and he hasn't answered those satisfactorily. So if I'm IRS, I'm looking at that too, thinking maybe there's an issue here. We've yet to see what the actual details are, of course.
So the charity questions are serious enough on their own, but critics say the money web goes even wider. Allegations Newsom has steered donors and major corporations into connected nonprofits tied to his orbit. Spencer Pratt posting, Gavin is suspiciously directing donors and megacorps to funnel money into his connected nonprofits. Don't forget his own agency, Cal Volunteers, has a nonprofit slush fund that was set up to launder $500,000 from fire aid. The entire NPO complex in California needs to be audited. So Gavin Newsom soliciting $340 million in behested payments from special interests, findings reveal from the California Post. So if the nonprofit cash pipeline looks dirty, the pressure gets even worse inside Newsom's own circle. Dana Williamson is former chief of staff, and why her plea deal has Gavin looking very nervous. Dana Williamson, former chief of staff to Newsom, took a plea deal and is turning state's evidence against him and others. That's why he is so nervous. It doesn't stop with one California insider flipping. Shifting gears, Kelly Loeffler lays out how the Trump team is hunting down $200 billion in COVID fraud, with 562,000 fraudsters now in the crosshairs. So she reveals they found and now targeting the Democrats' tried forgiving some of this stuff. Let's take a look at what she says here.
And like I've said in the past, look, there's a political side that doesn't seem to care whether or not there's fraud going on in their state. They try to say that they're fighting it, but clearly they're not. And so when we have hard-earned taxpayer dollars that are being just stolen by fraudsters, I'm just wondering how the SBA, for example, is working to make sure that we have the kind of enforcement that we need to make sure that we don't have this kind of fraud that's going on.
Well, this is what the White House task force, fraud task force is all about, is rooting out this systemic fraud. This is not incidental fraud. This is highly systemic. We came in at the SBA from day one, identified $200 billion in COVID era fraud. You mentioned the 4 charges in Ohio. I was at that press conference in Ohio with the vice president's task force.
Yeah.
And look, that's just 4 out of the 27,000 in that state that we identified. Think about what we just turned over to the DOJ and Treasury, $22 billion in COVID era fraud that the Biden administration tried to forgive and sweep under the rug. We're going back and prosecuting it and going after it for collection. That's 562,000 fraudsters that we're going after. That's just in one program. It shows you how systemic it is, how sophisticated some of these programs are, but people are going to jail now. Yeah. And that's what's great, because in Minnesota, the Feeding Our Futures woman, she's in jail for 42 years. She'll be in prison for 42 years.
Right.
So here's the moment where Gavin Newsom's act collapses. CNN said the probe began last year in Sacramento from a whistleblower complaint. Josh Boswell said that Jennifer Seibel Newsom and her company pulled in $3.7 million from her own charity since 2012. Spencer Pratt pointed straight at Cal volunteers and claimed $500,000 fire-aid laundering channel. And Kelly Loeffler just dropped the national frame around all of it. $200 billion in COVID-era fraud identified, $22 billion the former Biden administration tried to forgive, and 562,000 fraudsters now in the crosshairs. That's the pattern. Democrats built a culture where public virtue became private revenue. Donald Trump came back, put adults in charge, and the paper trail started smoking. Gavin Newsom's not a martyr. Gavin Newsom is a warning label. So here's the line that matters tonight. No mercy for the nonprofit grift machine. No deference for the California brand, and no media amnesty for the people who tried to sell this as Trumpian revenge. President Trump did not invent Jennifer Newsom's books. President Trump did not invent the whistleblower in Sacramento. President Trump did not force Gavin Newsom to lie about how the probe started. Gavin and his circle did that all by themselves, and now Attorney General Todd Blanche and every federal investigator on this lane need to keep pressing. Subpoena the records, audit the donor pipelines, drag every little federal slush fund into daylight, and keep going far past California. Because Kelly Loeffler's 562,000 fraudster dragnet tells you the theft ran coast to coast under the former Biden administration. If you're sick of watching connected Democrats treat taxpayer money like family inheritance, send this everywhere and force the names into the conversation. The cover-up is cracking, and the country deserves the full bill. And make sure you stay connected with the Next News Network. I've read your comments. I understand your frustration, and that is why I set up this telephone number just for you. All you got to do is text raw feed to 844-840-4963. We're bypassing the middleman, going direct. I'll send you a text message every night with the latest news we've produced for the day, so you can stay on the inside track of what's happening in this country every single day when those notifications from YouTube never arrive. And make sure you check out the merch shelf below this video. Celebrate America 250 with the Next News Network, or just simply go to shop.nextnewsnetwork.com. Oh, this is going to be fun to track, the Gavin Newsom investigation. You know, these they go in front of the camera and cause more problems for themselves when they just keep on lying and lying and lying. We have some more news with respect to Air Force One. Yeah, with some new visuals of President Trump's new Air Force One and the send-off that the old Air Force One received. It's kind of bittersweet, But it's going to be exciting to see this new Air Force One taking to the skies. The old Air Force One just made its last ride, and Donald Trump is lining up a July 4th debut for a new Boeing 747 painted red, white, dark blue, and gold. That's not just aviation trivia, that is a national mood in one image. Trump closed out the G7 in France on a 35-year-old aircraft the stale establishment left hanging around like a museum relic, and then turned right around and pushed America towards a bold new symbol of presidential power. Even Dan Scavino felt it, signing off with, "Thank you, Air Force One 2900. One era ended on that tarmac. The next one is about to roar over Washington. You see, symbols matter, because power matters when the commander-in-chief steps onto a tired 1990-era VC-25A that served presidents for more than 35 years. Every ally, every enemy sees the same thing, whether America still acts like the strongest nation on earth or whether the dead-eyed bureaucrats in Washington turn greatness into managed decline. Donald Trump just snapped that decline in half. His trip to the G7 in France marked the final flight of the old aircraft. And the Trump administration is targeting July 4th for the new Boeing 747 to join the fleet. Not next year, not after another swamp committee meeting. July 4th. The Air Force already finished the security modifications and flight testing. The plane is being painted now. Meanwhile, the sneering establishment that stalled upgrades for years gets exposed by the contrast. Trump prepares a White House flyover in patriotic colors. Joe Biden, the former AutoPen president, gets spotted on an American Airlines flight to Chicago like yesterday's discarded prop. One side projects command, the other side boards Group C. And that idea of renewal matters off the runway too, because plenty of Americans want the same kind of upgrade in their own lives. Now, you've probably seen the clip, Joe Rogan sitting with Mel Gibson talking about people close to him who went through serious health struggles and then saw dramatic turnarounds. Rogan brings up light-based therapies and how they impact the body at a cellular level. And Gibson says it straight, this stuff works. And that got my attention because in my own life, I watched something very similar unfold. For a long time, my wife was dealing with constant discomfort and anxiety. It was one of those draining battles that wears you down day after day. Then I found red light therapy through Jonathan Otto. If you want to check it out, search the interviews I've done with Jonathan right here on this channel, or go to myredlight.com. Use NNN25 for individual items or NNN30 for bundles. It's one more way to stop settling for worn-out answers. When Americans find something that works, we don't apologize for it. We use it, and we move forward. Now back to the image that the regime press can't stand. The detail that nails this story shut is not just that Trump's G7 trip was the last ride on the old VC-25A Air Force One. It's that the replacement is already past the hard part. Security modifications done, flight testing done. The plane is being painted right now in red, white, and dark blue and gold, and Trump's team is eyeing a July 4th arrival with a White House flyover in play. That's not delay, that's momentum. And the tweets exploding over this tell you exactly what Americans know and what it means. Deborah Simmons points out, was this the last flight for the outdated 1990 Air Force One? Will President Trump's next flight be on the new plane? Let's take a look. Man, it's really something else when you see Air Force One. It is such a symbol of America. But that raises the question, was the old 1990 bird taking its final bow? Now we get the answer. The Air Force is targeting July 4th to roll out Trump's new 747 with a bold red, white, blue, and gold paint job. The Air Force moving to finalize it. It is the Boeing 747 that was gifted by Qatar, being painted red, white, and dark blue. A White House flyover could happen July 4th. Security modifications and flight testing is done. The plane is being painted.
Targeting a July 4th delivery for the new Boeing 747 gifted by Qatar that will join the Air Force One fleet. A spokesman for the Air Force told the outlet that security modifications and the flight testing is already done and the plane's being painted. They recently unveiled a new red, white, dark blue, and gold color scheme. Brett.
I'm told there could be a flyover of the White House on July 4th. We shall see.
We shall see. So the new plane reportedly being finished for July 4th debut. Now Trump officials are signaling the current Air Force One may already have made its last presidential trip. Trump administration officials confirmed that the recent trip to G7 marked the final flight aboard the long-standing Boeing VC-25A, the current Air Force One aircraft, which has served presidents for over 35 years.
End of the old Air Force One. Top Trump aides seem to be hinting at a farewell to the iconic presidential aircraft. White House Communications Director Stephen Chung tweeting, "Well done, good and faithful servant, the last ride." And Dan Scavino writing, quote, "I have been fortunate to fly around the world on this iconic plane for 5.5 years of the 35 years that has been serving as U.S. president. Thank you." This comes amid reports that White House officials have had discussions with the idea of making Trump's planned July 3rd trip to Mount Rushmore his first flight on the new Air Force One. How about that?
How about that? So you hear the hints from the Trump aides. Next, he makes it personal with a direct thank you. This is the post from Dan Scavino giving you a really interesting look of Air Force One. He said, "I've been fortunate to fly around the world on this iconic plane for 5.5 years. Of the 35 years it's been serving U.S. presidents, thank you. Air Force One, 2900. What's interesting about that plane is that, you know, President Trump has his own presidential library that's planned for Miami, I believe. And this plane is going to be placed inside it, much like Ronald Reagan's Air Force One. So the farewell made it official. The old jet is headed into history, and now supporters are framing what's next as more than a new plane. They're calling it the start of a golden age. Take a look at this. Here is President Trump's beautiful new Air Force One jet. The old AF-1 jet's last trip was to the G7. Can't help but see the significance of the end of the olden age and the beginning of the golden age. Now, they had said it's being painted, so I'm not sure if somebody made an AI video of that. Maybe you guys can let me know in the comments what that little icon in the top right means. But either way, that is an accurate representation of what the real plane looks like. So social media reaction turning the aircraft swap into a symbol of the Trump comeback. Meanwhile, out of LAX, even aviation watchers were caught off guard when Trump's personal 757 suddenly rolled into view. Airline videos, a true I didn't see this coming moment at LAX. Trump Force One, the Boeing 757-200, arrived during the airline video's live broadcast on June 16th, 2026, catching plane jockey Kevin off guard as it rolls into view on camera.
What is this? Trump's plane. Well, this wasn't on my bingo card today.
Tower, good afternoon, Southwest 4978 on the Zulu 24 right. South 4978 Lake Tower, runway 24 right, clear to land. 4 right, clear to land, 4978.
did not have this one on my bingo card today. The Trump 757 at 200, making a rare north side arrival, 24 right.
Police 3, LA Tower, left hand subsimeter 29er, 99er. Good and Bravo airspace have requested. Squawk 0231.
From Trump's branded jet drawing attention on the runway, the contrast gets sharper. Next, Biden seen boarding an American Airlines flight. No presidential jet, no commanding image, just another passenger. But it's, of course, Joe Biden shuffling.
What if his wife's with him? Yeah. I just had one on a flight 2 weeks ago. That's no way. I was wondering, well, what these yeah.
Is he getting on my plane?
He must have been.
So here's the verdict. The failed establishment mindset gave America a 35-year-old presidential workhorse and years of drift, delay, and excuses. Donald Trump shut that chapter at the G7, and Dan Scavino captured the moment with a line that hit harder than any press release. Thank you, Air Force One 2900. That was the salute at the funeral for the old order. Then came the next chapter in plain English from the Air Force. Security modifications done, flight testing done, the aircraft being painted. How? Red, white, dark blue, and gold. On whose watch? President Donald J. Trump's. While globalists and legacy media snicker at pride itself, Trump is physically rebranding presidential power for America's birthday. That is command. That is confidence. That is a country climbing out of managed decay. So take in the split screen here, because it tells the whole story better than 1,000 think pieces from the corporate press. Trump leaves the G7 on the final flight of the old Air Force One, then drives towards a July 4th entrance for the new 747 in patriotic colors, with talk of a White House flyover hanging in the air like a challenge to every national decline peddler in Washington. At the same time, Biden shuffles onto a commercial American Airlines flight to Chicago, a spent relic from a failed era that already blew past its expiration date. That contrast is brutal because it's earned. Patriots build. Patriots upgrade. Patriots move the country forward, and Trump's doing all three in front of the entire world. And the same establishment class that mocked him, stalled him, and tried to shrink every America First victory will sneer at this too, because they hate national pride when they can't control it. So share this if you're ready for the golden age, and look to match the golden age fight. And make sure you stay connected with the Next News Network by going and texting raw feed to 844-840-4963. That is the number I set up just for you guys so that you can stay connected and get the notifications directly from me when YouTube fails you. And since we're celebrating the wins, celebrate America 250 with us by going to the merch shelf below this video or simply going to shop.nextnewsnetwork.com. All right, that is a wrap tonight, guys. I hope you enjoyed the broadcast. We'll have more news tomorrow as we head into the weekend. We'll continue to track the latest from the White House as I am your Chief White House Correspondent, Gary Franchi, for the Next News Network. We've been streaming on X at Next News as well as at Trump Daily Post, YouTube, Rumble, and Kick. So make sure you're following us on all platforms for the latest news and updates. And we'll be back tomorrow. So I'll see you guys then. Thank you for watching. Good night and God bless.